In this video, I'll be walking you through the assembly, install, and my first impressions of the Range Industries gear tunnel slide. I've also got some pretty exciting plans for a build on top of this drawer system that I will share with you at the end of this video.
What's up guys? I'm currently in my garage about to install a really cool new product into the gear tunnel of my Rivian. Just recently, the guys over at Range Industries reached out to me and they've developed a gear tunnel slide. It's basically a giant drawer for your gear tunnel that lets you access whatever you have stored in there a lot easier than trying to reach in and grab things. What's also really cool about it is that it provides a base to build out more custom setups inside your gear tunnel. Think camp kitchen. So today I'm going to walk you through the whole install process. It doesn't require any modification to your truck, which is really great. And it should be a pretty easy install. So I'm going to take you through all of that today. And I also want to share some of my future plans for what I want to build on top of this gear tunnel slide. Let's get started. So this is the base assembly of the whole system. It includes some aluminum extrusion on both sides here and here, so you can attach whatever customized parts you want to. And then there's a pretty heavy duty slide with these yellow release tabs, so that keeps it locked in position when it's open and when it's closed. But this is essentially the base, and the cool thing about it is that you can set it up to open on the driver's side or the passenger side of your truck. So to do that, they've included a few more parts. You've got two end cap pieces here, and this one has a cutout for a handle. So this is also not a handed part, so you can use it on either side depending on whether you have the drawer set up on the driver or passenger side. There's a small front piece and then a larger rear piece that also mounts to that base assembly and has more aluminum extrusion. And then you've got two metal brackets here. Those mount directly to the Rivian. And there's only one thing you have to do to mount this to your truck basically, and that's remove a plastic panel in the gear tunnel. And they include a couple pieces to close out that area once you've removed that plastic panel. So those are all the parts for this slide assembly. They obviously include the mounting hardware as well. All that's here. And that's basically it. Let's get started building this thing and putting it in the truck. In terms of tools that you need for this, really simple. A 10mm socket or wrench, a 5/32 hex key or Allen basically, and then they recommend using blue Loctite on all the bolts. So to get started with assembly, you want to determine which side you want the drawer to come out of. So you're going to take this piece with the handle cut out in it and put that on the side that you want the drawer to come out of. So for me, I want it to come out of the passenger side. You can see it'll fit nicely into your gear tunnel. And then if you wanted it on the driver's side, you would flip this around, it would go on the other side of the truck. And then those yellow release tabs are going to go through these rectangular holes here. So that end plate goes over the two release tabs here, and you can see for the passenger side setup, the longer arm of this plate is on this side. So that's where I'm gonna set up the back panel and install that piece. So this larger piece here is the back panel. I already started with a few of the bolts, but basically you've got a small bolt here and then an elongated nut, and that slides into the aluminum extrusion on the base assembly. So I'm gonna get the rest of these installed here, and then we'll slide on this larger piece. As I attach these bolts, I also just want to hand tighten them for right now because they want to be able to slide onto the extrusion on that base plate. So the back panel is loosely installed. Next up is this front panel. It's just a small strip here, and same idea with the slotted nuts and bolts. So I'm just gonna get those installed really quickly. All right, we take a quick pause from installation to remind you, don't be so focused on filming that you forget to put the Loctite on the bolts. I gotta go back and put this on the ones I've already installed. front and rear panels are installed. Next step is going to be to install the end caps. These panels right here, and the one with the handle, again, is going to go over those yellow tabs. And we've got 5 bolts we're going to use to attach each of the end caps. So that's basically it for assembly of the drawer slide itself. The last and final step is just to go back in and tighten down all of the bolts. I definitely noticed as I was putting the end caps on, you're gonna have to move the front and rear panels, which is why they tell you not to tighten them at the beginning. So don't be worried if things don't line up here. This back wall should still move until you tighten all the bolts. So I'm gonna go ahead and get everything tightened down now. All right, next step is in the gear tunnel. This plastic panel here is gonna get popped out, and that is where the bracket is going to go to mount this whole thing to your truck. With that cover removed, we can now install the bracket and the cover that goes in place of that plastic panel that we just took out. All right, we are basically done with assembly. There's one final step, and it's the big one, and that's to get the drawer into the gear tunnel. You might be able to do this on your own, but I think it would be very difficult. So I'm gonna get a little help to get this thing installed in the truck here. One quick thing to note before I install the drawer, you can leave this rubber mat in your gear tunnel here. It's actually below where the drawer is. But for install, I think I'm gonna take it out. I just don't want it to get caught and get bunched up while we're trying to get the drawer in here. But if you wanted to, you can leave this in your truck. One more quick thing, in the instructions, Range Industries recommends putting a piece of cardboard in the gear tunnel. You basically wanna rest the drawer slide unit on the cardboard and kind of help pull it across with the cardboard on the floor, just so you're not ripping up your carpet. So, gonna give this a shot, and we'll see how easy it is to get in here. The drawer slide is in the gear tunnel, and honestly, it was pretty easy to install. I thought it was gonna be quite a bit more difficult. Definitely having another person made it quite a bit easier, and putting that cardboard on the floor and just kind of sliding it across worked really well. So, last final step is just to attach here with 2 bolts, another 2 bolts here, and obviously the same thing on the other side, and then we will have a functioning gear tunnel slide. Super stoked. I'm over on the driver's side here, and you can see the bolt hole opening on the bracket is not lining up with this bracket of the drawer, but I loosened up these 2 bolts here, which in the instructions it said you could do, and you'll notice I can pull the drawer towards me a little bit, and that bracket can also pivot a little bit. So I think with just a little bit of movement, these bolts are gonna fit just fine. All right, we've got this thing installed, just pulled it out and deployed it. And the first thing that really surprised me in a good way is that it deploys quite a bit further than I was expecting. I wasn't sure how much of it was gonna still be in the gear tunnel when it was in its full open position, but basically all of it slides out, which is really nice. So you can access everything in the drawer really easily. The one thing that's, I would say, just a little bit of a bummer or annoyance is you have to unlock the drawer with both of these releases here for each of the rails. So it's not a one-hand operation. You have to grab it with both hands and unlock both of those. So it's not the most convenient thing, but also not a huge deal. In terms of how much it deflects at the end as well, I was concerned with the fact that it's basically fully cantilevered. So there's nothing on the bottom that's touching the ground. It's not resting on the gear tunnel at all. But this is built really solid. And if I just grab this, try to move it, it definitely deflects a little bit. But the movement is pretty minimal. So overall, the whole thing feels really solid and really well built. So they've got a 200-pound load limit on this drawer slide. And I'm assuming that's for the whole thing. You probably wouldn't want to put 200 pounds right at the end here. Just thinking like if someone sat on it right at the end, it might not hold up the best. But the entire drawer can hold 200 pounds, which I think is probably plenty for how much gear you're going to be able to fit in here. And speaking of gear, I'm actually going to take all the stuff that I normally put in my frunk. I'm going to see if I can fit it all in the drawer. I think I'll be able to. You definitely lose a little bit of height, obviously, when this thing is installed. But I'm gonna grab that gear, put it on the drawer here, and we'll see how that goes. Well, that worked. I would say just barely, but everything that's normally in my frunk fits in the gear tunnel. It's a good amount of stuff to be able to fit on a drawer, and if I had this just in the gear tunnel, it would be a little harder to access. But obviously, what you can put on this drawer, I mean, there's hundreds of different things. So what I want to do is get some measurements for you, because this is just the gear that I use. Obviously, you may be using something different. But what's important is how much space you're going to have from the bottom of the drawer here to the top of the gear tunnel once this thing is installed. So I'm going to get those measurements for you and I will share them with you next.
So the overall length of the drawer is 60 inches and the amount that sticks out past the vehicle is about 53 inches. The base of the drawer is 14 inches and the smaller channel that's a little bit deeper is 7 3/4 inches wide. The overall opening size is 12 inches and you have about 15 inches from the bottom of the drawer to the top of the gear tunnel latch. And finally, you're losing about 5 1/4 inches of height with this drawer installed. All right, that wraps up assembly, installation, and some of my initial impressions of this gear tunnel slide. A few final things to cover. You can still access your 120 and 12 volt outlets in the gear tunnel, so those are not blocked. And the last thing, this unit costs $1,299. So as just a drawer to access your gear, I think it's a little on the expensive side, but if you're going to be using it to build something out in the gear tunnel, I think it's a great base to get started. So that sets up the final segment of this video, which is a little teaser of the camp kitchen that I plan on building out on this gear tunnel slide. I'll be sharing the entire build process with you. It's probably going to be a multiple video series, but I'm really excited for this one. I've got some awesome plans for it. So much more to come on that in future videos. Thanks for watching, everyone.